Hi guys, welcome to our February hug. It is our second hug of 2024. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Brie. I am the community manager here at Neighborhood, and today we are talking about core reports you need to set up into your HubSpot account first. So before we get into anything, just a reminder, we've got a chat box on the right-hand side of the screen where you can leave questions and comments if you wish. And always, as always, you can get in touch with any topics you would like us to talk about, or if you have any questions after the fact, you can email me at bg@mbh.co. Finally, one more thing for our March hug, which is coming up next month. Go grab your ticket after you have watched this video. We will be talking about sales pipelines and optimizing your sales pipelines, and that will be happening on the 28th of March, 2024. Okay, now that is all out of the way. To help me today, I have Dom here. He is our head of digital strategy here at Neighborhood, and he's just celebrated his 6th anniversary at Neighborhood. Coming up on 7. So I feel like you've been around the block when it comes to reporting and how far it's come, yeah?
Pretty much. Seen it from the very earliest days, as Trav says, made all the mistakes, through to today, where it's a totally different beast.
Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Well, I feel like the reason we came up with this topic today is because we do see a lot of HubSpot users, wanting to report on things, but not really know where to start, because it can be a bit overwhelming if you've never really done reporting before. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of pre-made ones, but also I feel like you get the best results out of customized reporting as well. So I don't know if you've had any experiences with that while you've been here.
Yeah, I think there's it's one of those things that I think everyone can benefit from. A lot of the people we work with, I think, are a little scared of it, and for good reason. It can become pretty deep extremely quickly. Yeah. So I always tell people that the best way to learn is by doing. Best way to start is by starting. So jumping in and building reports is how I think everyone in this office has learned how to do it. And hopefully today will be a good guide to, where to start. Some of the stuff to get you off the ground, running, and just getting some data, getting some context for the stuff that's happening.
Yeah. Be able to start somewhere, at least so you can look at insights and stuff like that. Yeah, sick. Well, I thought for this session, especially because I think this one is aimed at people who maybe are a little bit newer to the reporting side of things in HubSpot. If you do want us to do some more advanced things like customer journeys or attribution reports, just let us know and we can do a session on that. But I feel like this one is definitely for the more newbies. But before we jump into actually talking about certain reports that you should set up, Dom, do you want to take us through maybe a couple of points on things you need to know before you actually jump in and start creating things?
Yeah, sure. Like I said, I think that the reporting tool can seem a bit scary first time you jump in. There's a lot that's going on in there. There's a lot that it can do. So I think there's a few things to maybe touch on just as an example off the bat. You mentioned earlier custom reporting. Anyone who's been into that section of HubSpot will know that there's different types of reports you can build. There's the library, which is a bunch of reports that HubSpot has put together based on stuff that's been historically useful to other people. There's the custom reporting tools. There's a simple one, which was the original one. That was all they had back in the day, which is good for something quick, but I tend not to use it just because it's limited. You can do a lot more interesting ways in the other tools. So that first option, let me just get the specific name of it before I, that first single object reporting is what it's called. Is pretty basic, and it's not something that I generally recommend using. The custom report builder, the next one along, is a much more useful, much more beneficial tool that I think you'll get a lot more out of. So that's where I think we'll spend most of our day today. Most of the stuff we speak about will be out of there. The other ones, attribution, funnels, AI-assisted report building, and some customer journey stuff, all of those are another degree of complexity. So like Brie said, if that's a separate session that we can talk about them, then that might make sense.
Yep.
Though I might need to study up on that myself.
Yeah.
Those ones are something else, those ones. So first and foremost, custom report builder is the place to start. It's the place where I think you can do the most and sort of build the most interesting reports. On top of that, if you go into that custom report builder, the first screen that pops up is something called data sources, also a bit confusing. This is also, I think, a basic mistake that people run into off the bat, is picking the right data source for what you're trying to report on. So in short, the data source is basically the thing you're counting. So if you're wanting to count the number of people, then contacts should be your primary data source. If you're wanting to count the number of deals, then deals should be your primary data source. The reason they give you the chance to add more is if you want to then diversify your report. If you want to say, I want to count the number of contacts based on some information in the deal, I want to count how many contacts have a deal in that stage, then you're using two different data sources, but you're still counting the number of contacts, so that defines the primary data source, right? So be careful with your which data source you pick. Make sure you're counting the thing you want to be counting. And then everything else on top of that is gravy.
Yep.
Like you can just pick whichever other ones you want to try and bring into the mix. And that one, they'll limit you. I think it's limited to 3 or 4 or something.
Yep.
But I find if you're using more than 4 data sources, you're probably building something pretty loose anyway.
Yeah.
So after that, you should be fine. Yeah, pick your primary data source and make sure it's the one you're looking for. Beyond that, what else I got here? The reporting types. So if we skip into the next screen, I'll just use this as a contact primary data source. On this next screen, you get to pick which kind of report you want to build visually, which visualization, which graph, for lack of a better term. The choice here might be more deep than you were expecting, because some of these reports will do some things that others won't. For example, on a number report, which is one of these ones here, KPI is what it's under. So if I just bring in, for example, the count of contacts, and we'll cross-reference it with, we'll just bring in the count of contacts for now. So the number that appears here, if it changes over time, if I was to put a time metric into it, like per month or per year or whatever, then it would show me the change over time. So I'd get some indication on if that number was growing or decreasing. Only this type of report will do that. Similarly, gauge reports let you pick out a goal. That's something that they're relatively unique to them. And some line reports. The pivot tables can have 2 types of visualization. So each one can do slightly different things. So it can be a bigger question sometimes than just whichever one looks the best or whichever one you want it to look like. Sometimes the one you pick can do more, or you need to try and pick a certain one to do the thing you want to be able to do. So that's the other thing to be mindful of. Click through all of these when you're building a report, work out which one you like the look of the most, but then also which one gives you the best data, because it might not be the one you expect. Last couple, filters. So as we go through and build some today, we'll go through this in more detail, but filtering is an important part of building out your graphs. Building out your reports, I should say. The filter basically is taking the maximum data set that you could possibly report on and bringing it back to just being a specific segment or a specific group of data. So for example, maybe you don't want to do all contacts, you want to just do customers. Or maybe you don't want to do people from your entire database from the beginning of time, maybe you just want to focus on this year. Those would be filters. So anytime you want to try and cut down on the number of people you're reporting on, that's a filter. And one of the good things about HubSpot and the reporting tool is that you can basically make a filter out of anything. You can build filters on filters on filters to get it more and more specific to the point where you're only speaking about a few people out of thousands, tens of thousands. So don't be too afraid to sort of layer on the filters there. You just have to remember they're there. So sometimes you take that report, you'll clone it, and you'll be like, oh my God, all the numbers are gone. It's all entirely wrong. It's not. You've just got a filter on. You forgot to turn it off. So that's how the filters work. One thing that might be more of a masterclass thing down the track, but you'll see on that filters page, it's going to give you the option to just have all of the filters apply. 9 times out of 10, that's what you want it to be. You want it to be, hey, if all of these filters are met, then filter out those people. But you can also get into the and or, same as like a workflow or a list where you say, maybe you want this filter or this filter to apply. So there are some rules around that. It can get more complex again. You can play with it, but at its core, filters, useful tool.
Awesome. Well, we thought we'd split this bit into 2 sections, showing you guys a couple of reports. Going to start with marketing and then do some sales reports, because we think that, that's what most people are after. If you're looking at customer service reports, we might do a service hub session maybe in the future where we'll talk about that. But in this one, just marketing and sales. So Dom's going to start us off with talking about some lead source reporting and how that can help you guys.
So yeah, I think that when I first start working on a fresh portal with someone, one of the first things I build out for them is some lead source reporting. The reason for that is that it tells you where people are coming from and what's performing very, very quickly, very, very easily. And it's something that I think is like useful to everyone. Every company wants to know how people found them and what things are working, what advertising dollars are performing, and what stuff isn't working and can be turned off. So this is generally sort of my number one report that I build people. So I'm going to go into the custom report builder. What we're going to build now is a contact primary data source report. So I'm going to leave that as contacts, which is already selected, and move along to the next page. And then on this second page, we're going to do a count of contacts. So in this instance, we are counting the number of contacts that meet these criteria. And then I'm going to use as my x-axis original source first and foremost. So original source is the category of source that HubSpot applies when someone enters the system. It is defined as, you can see them on the screen here, organic search or paid search, so whether or not it's a paid campaign or someone just searching you organically. Email marketing, if they've been created via an email. Organic social is anyone who's come in organically after searching you on any search platform, not just Google, but Bing and stuff as well, potentially. Referrals is someone who's been referred to your site from another site. You'll see that a lot if you do backlinking in blogs and things like that, or if you have, if you're on like a directory site. Other campaigns is if they've come through a campaign that isn't one of the other things on the screen right now, so it's kind of a bit of a catch-all. Direct traffic is if they've typed your name into the search bar, if they have clicked on a link that doesn't have the appropriate linking stuff to make it one of these other ones. You will sometimes see more direct traffic than you'd expect. It seems to be a little bit of a catch-all as well. If the system isn't sure what it should be, often it will revert to direct traffic, but not relevant in this particular chat. Offline source, which is someone being imported, someone being created through the email tools or being created directly in the CRM or something like that. And then paid social, which is much like paid search, those paid campaigns that you would do, advertising campaigns. So first and foremost, you get a picture that shows you where people are coming from into the system based on those categories. And if I just look at that as a pie chart, I can very quickly and easily understand what things that we're doing in the system that are, jump down to my fields here. If I put it back up to the breakdown, it'll tell me where those people are coming from, and it'll give me a breakdown by percentage. So this is where most of the people that are coming into the system are coming from. You can take that one step deeper. So, excuse me, there are what they call drill down properties with these source properties. So this here gives me a little, like a simple picture, but let's say, for example, I'm looking at paid search or my paid social, and I'm not seeing what specific channel they came from. It doesn't, I don't know if it was Facebook, I don't know if it was Google, I don't know if it was LinkedIn, I just know that it was paid. I paid money for it, but I don't know where. Not as useful. The way that you can get around that is by breaking down your report to another level with another data property, another data point. So on the left here, you can see I'm still searching for original. I'm going to use drill down. I'm going to bring drill down 1 over across into the breakdown category. And then just to clean it up a little bit, I'm going to filter out all of these offline sources because I think they're cluttering up my report a little bit. So I'm going to take that, I'm going to say if it's none of offline sources, apply. That should take out that column. And like I said, clean it up and it'll reset the axes a little bit, make it a little bit clearer to see. So now that when I hover over it, because this is a stacked graph, I can turn off the stacking if I like as well and have it all arrayed out separately in their own columns. It's going to make it a pretty full-on report though, so brace yourself on that one. But you can see here, now I can see in each of these major categories, for example, organic social, which of the, in this case, social medias drove those people.
Yeah.
So for us, for this particular data set, this example that we're using, YouTube was the big one with, looks like LinkedIn coming in second, and then Facebook just behind that and Twitter below that. So now immediately I understand, well, if I'm looking at this, seems like YouTube's doing a lot. That's probably a reasonable place to put some money, or if I'm already putting money, to double down on that one. If I'm investing as much into, let's say, for example, Twitter as I am YouTube, and I'm not getting the returns, turn that off immediately. Pointless. So hopefully putting that together, just a simple original source report gives you immediately useful information that you can use to start making like smarter decisions.
Absolutely. And I think even here, we use it like every week just to have a check at like what channels are performing, like with neighborhood and stuff. It helps to make decisions pretty quickly, I feel like. Awesome sauce. Well, I feel like I shouldn't say awesome sauce, but I'm going with it. I'm going to talk a little bit about segmented reporting. So when we're talking about segments, we're talking about the segmenting your audience into different areas, whether that be by industry, whether it be by personas, if you have those set up, or also by regions as well. So that could be states, it could be countries, things like that. There's lots of different segments. And we want to be looking at which segments are performing and which are not performing. This also helps, I've found, if you're noticing, for example, that people are coming in from, let's say, Turkey, and you don't really cater to people in Turkey. You want to understand why those people are coming over there and what you can do to rectify it as well. So I have started building a report, which I'll share with you guys now. Awesome. So in what I have built so far, what we're looking at is all the different industries across our account and how many people are actually in that industry. And for this one, we're actually looking at the count of companies rather than the count of contacts, because I want to, let's say, for example, I sell to companies and I'm not actual just people, you know. I want to see what industries and what companies I am counting and looking at. Now, to kind of go back to what you were talking about before, I think this can give us some idea. For example, we can see 14 different companies in the computer software industry, but maybe I want to break it down even further and see where they're coming from, for example. Now, just to change it up a bit, I'd love to look at actually the country and regions in which people are coming from. So if I just drag that country and region data point over, we can see quickly changes over. We've got a bunch from Australia, also a couple from around the world, and a couple in the United States as well. And then I'm going to use what Dom was talking about before, which is the original source type, but specifically for companies. Just make sure if you are using two different data sources that you are selecting it from the same, otherwise it can start getting a little bit funky. I'm going to break it down by source type. We'll wait for that to refresh. Awesome. As you can see, it's still we're still looking at all the different segments, but now we've just broken it down a little bit more to get a little bit more information on where people are coming from. So like my example before, if we're getting people from Brazil, let's say, a bunch of leads, and I don't know where they're coming from, I can go into here, I've got my report, I can see it's an offline source, so maybe it was added by someone into the system for some certain reason. I've seen companies with their paid locations are a bit off and they're getting a bunch of leads from somewhere, you don't want them. Or maybe you do have two setups in like Australia and America and you're noticing America's not doing as well. So you need to put more money into that area there. So that's a quick example of segments. You could replace that country and region with a bunch of different segments. I'm sure you could do lists as well if you wanted to build a list and report on that as a segment as well. It just really depends on what segment you're looking at. But yeah. I
find segment stuff also useful for things like personas.
Definitely.
Also useful for job title. I know that we've used it historically. It's a good... Job title's a tricky one because it's not something you can often have as a drop down. Sometimes you can, depending on your industry and what you do. But you have to let people type it in, and you can start to see what's coming up a lot, like what spikes, what words are being used consistently, even if it's not the traditional, like it's not a set number of options. You'll see that in countries as well. What countries do people misspell a lot? Austria and Australia, perhaps.
Yeah, all the time. I feel like I see that. Yeah. Awesome. I will hand it back to you for our next piece, which I believe is the traffic reports page.
Yeah, so traffic reporting or like visitors on the website, to put it another way, also very useful. This is also a good counterpoint to building your own graphs. I think that 9 times out of 10, I recommend that you build your own report because A, you understand where you got the data from and where you're pulling information from. And if something's not what you expect it to be, it's much easier to troubleshoot when you know how you got there. The reports that are pre-built are often relatively simple, so it's not like difficult to troubleshoot them, but it can be annoying or difficult to understand how they got a specific number if you weren't a part of the creation process. This, however, traffic reporting is one of the ones that comes out of the box and I don't really have a way to improve on. The way that they do it in HubSpot's pretty locked down. So I'd probably recommend just using it as you see it, though you can steal parts of it for dashboards and things as you need, which we'll talk about later. So to get to the reporting, under the reporting menu in HubSpot, if you go to reports and then down to traffic under reports, you'll get to a page that looks like this. Now this is also some test data, so bear in mind that what you're seeing here is, do you want to go past?
Come on. Come on.
Look, I've actually realised I should be in this.
All right, do you want my seat?
Yeah, swap over. Quick.
There's a spot right there.
Come on.
Do you want to talk about your favourite report?
Maybe top 6 favourite.
We've got a whole bunch of printout reporting, so yeah, let's look at it.
Don't worry. Not quite.
So this account that we're in here is one of our test accounts. Yep. So the data within it might be a little bit unexpected, but what you're seeing should give you a picture of what you can expect on your site and your HubSpot portal. So first and foremost, you'll see the sessions on site broken up with those source categories that we spoke about earlier. So you'll be able to see how are people finding us. Specifically, how are they finding the site? All of this also comes through the tracking code, which is worth noting. If your website isn't built on HubSpot, then it will require the tracking code in order to get this data. Something we've run into in the past is it may not be identical to Google Analytics. If you use Google Analytics, you might see slightly different numbers. That's because they have their own algorithms, their own way of tracking, their own cookies. It's not going to be identical data, but as long as the peaks and troughs are the same, then everything should be working. Yep. As long as they spike at the same times and they dip at the same times, then you can be fairly confident that everything's in order. Okay, all that said, first and foremost, sessions. So you'll be able to see who's on site, how they found you, stuff like that. You can see in this case, it's a pretty regular report, though there is a big dip that happened here. The way that this one's been set up is cumulative, which means that each of these is stacked on top of each other. So you can see which one is causing the dip, and then all the ones above it are falling into the dip of one of them. If I was to play with that, maybe make it like a column graph or something, it would be a little bit more apparent where that's happening, right? So you can see here, this particular day. So it was a rough day on this particular website. So sessions, first and foremost. You can do the same thing for contacts. So if you want to see where contacts are being created, this one here, just a couple of spikes, couple of contacts coming in on a certain couple of days. But if we go down a little bit, or if we, go across these tabs at the top, Pages is a very useful one. You can go into each specific page. You can also compare pages by ticking these boxes on the left here. So you see if I tick 2 of them, I can see 2 pages in tandem and which page is performing, both as views or in terms of like traffic and with regards to submissions and conversions. If we keep going along these tabs, UTM parameters, this is probably the primary way that I would look at how UTMs are tracking through HubSpot. For those who don't know, UTMs are specific links. You'll see them when you click on like an article in Facebook or on social media more often than not, but it adds a string to the end of the URL that passes back source information to the original site. So what this is doing is if you set up your UTM tags correctly, you'll be able to see what campaign pushed someone onto your site, what specific image on social media, or what form or email or whatever the thing was. You'll be able to track back to what specific thing pushed them to the site. So This is where you can see that information. Same goes down here. I can see different types of campaigns that are running. I can compare them by ticking them, all that sort of thing. What's working, what's not working, all that sort of jazz. And then a few more. Device type, country, browser type, topic cluster. There's a bunch here that you can get at a glance to understand, is our site ticking the boxes it needs to tick. So yeah, traffic reporting in HubSpot, solid. Well, worth checking out.
Yeah, awesome. I'm actually going to kind of piggyback off you and talk about another tool that isn't necessarily, I guess, building your own report, but a tool that I do think is underused, which is the campaigns tool. Now, I will note it's only available for Marketing Pro and Enterprise, but if you have those, definitely be using this. And it's a good thing to start setting up straight away, especially if you're doing a bunch of marketing campaigns from within HubSpot itself. So just jumping in, where you'll find it living is under marketing and then campaigns. And you'll notice we've got a bunch of campaigns here. I'm going to quickly take you through the process of setting it up so you have an idea of what works. Once again, this is a test account, so there won't be too much data in it, but you'll get, I guess, the gist of why this can be super helpful for you.
It might also be worth noting that the campaign tool recently got updated. If you've used HubSpot for a while, what we're about to show you may look different, but you're probably used to that by now. It's just because they've given it a new coat of paint.
Yep, it looks a lot better, I will say.
It's an improvement.
Okay, I'm going to start from scratch. I usually always pick start from scratch in HubSpot because I always have an idea of what I want to do. You're going to name the campaign after what you're doing. So, for example, if you're doing a bunch of nurtures for maybe your SQLs or something, you're trying something new for the first quarter of 2024, you can name it specifically after that. And keep in mind, after this screen, we're actually going to be adding a bunch of assets from HubSpot into this campaign. So you're thinking about how those assets are actually grouped together.
So one thing to note on the campaign name is, as much as you may be tempted to give it a silly name, as I'm sure in this office has come up once or twice, if you do use UTM tags, you cannot change that campaign name. So be mindful that you are naming the campaign for all future reporting at this point in time, and you may not realize it. So
that personally has never happened to me, but
weird. It has come up once or twice.
Okay. Well, don't do that. Another thing you can do is set a campaign color. I personally have never really used it other than for it to look pretty. I guess if you want to make all your nurture campaigns like a blue to make them easy to find.
The only place you'll see it is on the left-hand side of this screen. It doesn't really play into anything else.
Business unit, if that's available. Campaign owner, so this is the person who's actually owning this campaign and is responsible for, reporting back and how it's performing. So I'll make it myself. And campaign start date and end date. If we're doing a 2024 nurture, for the example, it'd be from the start of January to the end. And this is basically the point, the end date should be really the point where you're going to look back and start optimizing and reviewing what you could have done better at the end of it. So we'll just do the end of the year for now. You can write in your campaign goals, what you want to achieve, the audience, the currency, and also some notes. I won't put any of those in for now, but
those are just context. Like, it doesn't change the campaign at all.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got all our information on the left-hand side. Right in the middle here, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is add some assets. So when we're talking about marketing assets, we're talking about emails, blogs, landing pages, workflows. I think there's something else that I can't think of right now, but basically anything that, I think you can do ads as well actually, and CTAs. Basically anything that's contributing to your campaign that's been built in HubSpot. So we were talking about emails, so I'm just going to add in a bunch of emails. You would basically select the ones for your nurtures. You could also maybe select if there's any workflows that are happening as well. You could do that. If there's any static lists or CTAs that are being used in the emails or landing pages that the emails are being led to, you're just going to add everything as a part of that campaign. So once you've done that, you'll click save. They'll all jump into here. And if you go into performance, what it's going to start doing is giving you some overarching bird's eye view information on how that campaign is going. If you scroll down, you can start to go into your assets themselves and how they're performing. But really what this is useful for is for you to jump in in the morning or afternoon and be like, hey, how is this going? I need to get some quick numbers for my manager or my boss. Go here straight away. They also have a couple of things as well. They've got attribution reporting, which I actually haven't looked into yet. But I believe if you've got things like ads connected, it will start having a look at the revenue as well.
Well, it's also,
I'm not sure how far it goes though.
Yeah, it gets attribution reporting is when you want to start applying value to different things that might have influenced their decision to buy or convert. So there are different attribution models. There are things like just the last thing they looked at, give all the credit to that thing, and everything that came before that gets no credit. Alternatively, the first thing they saw gets all the credit. There are things like U-shaped where the first and the last get credit and then no credit in the middle or lots of credit in the middle. Like there's a bunch of different ways to look at it. It's complex. It's deep. Yeah.
But that is available in the campaigns tool, which is great. Another two other ones I like looking at, the tasks is actually awesome, especially if you're working as a team on a campaign and you want to make some changes throughout it. You can put them in here, assign them to people, so you can keep moving in one space. And finally, the budget as well. You can add in how much you're spending on this campaign specifically, which will help with the attribution reporting and seeing how much you're actually making or how much your customers that you're getting are costing you based on this campaign. So I feel like this is a very underused feature, and it's gotten a lot better. So definitely recommend just putting your campaigns in here if you can.
Very useful. I will say it in the vein of reporting, it can be generous with its perception of how many people have been influenced by a campaign. It'll say that if someone looks at a page, then maybe it influenced them. Or if they are on an email receive list, maybe they were influenced. So take that side of it with maybe just a little grain of salt. But if you're looking for good numbers, campaigns tool's got your back. It's going to give you sort of the best case scenario.
Heck yeah, awesome. Oh, beautiful. That wraps up our marketing side of things. So we're going to jump into more of a sales focus now. Dom's going to start us off with pipeline details and kind of talking about that. And I'm going to end this section talking about dashboards and stuff. So we will get into that, don't worry. But I'll hand it over to you. Yeah,
so pipeline details is ultimately talking about just how's my deal pipeline going? How's my sales process currently sitting right now? How does the information look? All that sort of thing. There are a bunch of reports that can help with that. I'm just going to pull up my reporting tool again, and we're going to build some from scratch. So bear with me for a second here. But functionally, the stuff that I would look at if I was trying to get some detail on my sales pipeline is the number of deals in a stage. It's something I think we'll talk about a little bit more, but beyond number of deals, sometimes more important or a better way to look at it is amount of revenue. So each deal from a certain point should have an amount of money associated with it. At the point where you're able to define the thing that they'll be buying, whether you're using products or not or anything like that, you'll have a number associated with that deal. And it can be a lot more poignant when you look at a deal pipeline and say, I have 15 deals in this stage as opposed to I have $150,000 sitting in this stage, right? So that can be a very useful way. So we'll look at that as well. And the time spent in stage, I think, can also be possible. That we might come back around to those ones. So first and foremost, going to go to my custom report builder. This time, going to change my primary data source, going to make it deals. So if I scroll down here to deals, and we'll just use that for now, create a report based on that. Now, some of this you can get directly from the sales pipeline. And if that is where you work, if you spend your day on the sales pipeline, by all means, use the built-in reporting you get there. But sometimes you need to be able to share those numbers, right? You need to be able to pass those up the chain or across to another colleague or whatever it might be. So that's why we'll go through building a report for it as well, because those can be a little bit more shareable and usable as opposed to just the sales pipeline.
Absolutely.
So over here on the left, we're going to count, first off, I'll count deals, but I'll change that up in a second. So we'll go count deals, and we're going to say the pipeline is going to be a filter, actually. I'm going to change my mind almost immediately on that.
I mean, this is just building reports.
This is how I build reports, little bit by little bit. So we'll say if the pipeline is any of, and this is one of our test accounts, so bear with me here. Some of these may or may not have some data. We'll use a sales pipeline, for example. So we have 45 deals in the sales pipeline, but I'm not getting a lot of information from that graph right now, just a number of deals. So let's break it down with stage, deal stage. So now it's going to show us how many deals we have sitting in each stage of that pipeline, which is great. So 7 targets, 8 leads, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's good. What's better is if I say amount of money, and we'll replace count of deals with amount. So amount is, I think, the only other property that can be used as a value as opposed to count. So you're like, what's the thing I'm counting? Is it number of things or dollars?
Yep.
Dates sometimes can be used as a count as well. And you can see here, this has changed to being 51,000 in targets, 150,000 in leads, 50 billion in close one. Great year for big lytics.
Awesome, well done.
Huge numbers. And that's something that I can then, pass up the chain. I can also start to break it down even deeper. So let's say, hypothetically, we want to see, let's bring in contact information. Actually, let's start to make this a little bit more complex. So at the start, I just picked deals as my data source. I'm going to pick a second one now, contacts. And we're going to bring some of that information in as well. So my report should remain the same because I haven't used any contact information up until now. But now I'm going to say up here, we're going to look for life cycle stage, actually might not work. Let's go with their HubSpot score as an example. Yep. So we'll bring in their HubSpot score as a breakdown. And what that will do is break up my columns in my deal pipeline report with the score of the people within it. This particular one, they don't have a lot of scores going on. But let's say, hypothetically, if you use personas, hey, of the 15 deals / $50 billion I have in my close one stage, what personas make up those deals? That's the kind of report you can build. Or what city are they in? Or all of those segments you were talking about before. What industry are they in? All of that stuff starts to become further dimensions in your report that can become useful. So very quick, very basic, here's what the sales pipeline looks like today, or here's what the sales pipeline looked like last week, or something like that. Is a very quick and easy report to pull out and pass on to whoever needs to see it.
Absolutely, and I think it can also be really good at showing like blockers or bottlenecks where you're noticing there's a bunch, let's say in the discovery call, and they're just not moving forward. Why is that? And you can start asking questions, I guess.
So if you're seeing like, you would hope that it's a gentle curve up to your close one sort of stage. But if it has a spike, then clearly there's an issue. Something's holding things up in that process. Yeah,
awesome. Moving on to another deal focused is a win and loss analysis and looking at the reasons why things might be won or why they might be lost. Now, HubSpot has their own won and lost reason properties, but they are free-form text, I'm pretty sure. And the reason that isn't great is because people will just start typing whatever they want in there, or they might not type much at all and they'll just put like an X in and click enter and nothing happens. And then your data is meaningless. It doesn't mean anything. So what we usually recommend is doing a drop down based on your knowledge of your sales process, why things usually go through as lost, why things usually go through as won as well. I used to put in an other as well, but I've kind of stopped doing that because people tend to use it all the time and then it becomes meaningless again. So I'd probably go against that. If you do notice there's other reasons popping up over and over again, that's when you can add a new one in. For the sake of this hug here, I actually have already set up those properties, but I do want to take you through, I guess, the report and how to set it up quite simply. So I'll go into the reports, create one, and we'll do a custom report builder again. And similar to Dom, we're going to be looking at a property, we're going to be counting things within the deal side of things. So we're going to make the primary data source deals, if I can find it. Nice. And go next. So all I'm really going to do for this report is do count of deals and then also the closed won reasons. I believe it's this one here. We shall find out. This is actually a great example of why not to use the free text field. I actually selected the wrong one and someone said because I said so. That's the kind of stuff you don't want popping up in your reports versus a drop down, which hopefully will give us some a better report here. Awesome. So there's a bunch with no value. We'll filter those out in a second, but we've got 2 in which the price was right and 1 in which the strategy was right, and that's why they've moved forward. So usually what I'll do in terms of the filters for this kind of report, it sometimes can be important to check if there's no values for certain deals in a pipeline, because that's showing that your sales team isn't really following the process of putting that reason in. But generally, I would just recommend making it a required field every single time they bring it into that closed won or closed loss. So you're getting that data every single time. But in this case, we'll make sure that the closed won reason is known. Do that there. And apply. And now we've just got a super quick view. If you have multiple reasons as well, this will start spreading across. You can see what, for example, with the closed won, what's really working. Okay, I've really got my pricing down right, but not many people are choosing us for the strategy. So maybe we need to start thinking about our strategy or vice versa. On the other hand, if we're looking at closed loss reasons, we're looking for the main ones in which why are they losing? Is the price too high? Something like that. So instead of the closed won reasons on the x-axis, you would just have the closed lost reasons. Once again, we keep talking about breaking it down. You could probably break this down by persona and have a look at the people who are dependent on the closed loss reason. So it might be marketing managers who are saying the price is too high, or it might be owners who are saying the strategy wasn't right.
Sure.
So you can really start thinking about, where do I need to optimize my sales process? So I think that's a great one. You do need to do a little bit of setup beforehand with your properties, but once you've done that, you'll be good to go.
Yeah, I'd say also, you mentioned earlier with regards to free text versus drop downs and stuff. If you're unsure what your reasons are, I'd often say run free text for a while.
Yeah, great
Once
point.
you have some data of like a month or 2, pull it out, review what has been written in there.
Yep.
And then build your categories based on that, right?
Yeah,
and then you have drop downs for the next, period of time. You can test that, and if they work, great. If you need more, add them. But it doesn't, it's not, if you don't know what they are, don't just put in some random ones or anything, because it is a bit of a logical fallacy where if you just use a list, then you're going to use the options on that list, even if they're not perfect. So if you don't know what you don't know, just have it be free text and then use that reporting to better that process for the future. So.
Yep, great point. All right, you're going to talk about deal velocity.
Deal velocity. So this one's going to be a bit of a tricky one to show. So I think it might be something we can maybe just discuss a little bit more. But awesome. Deal velocity or sales velocity is basically, and the way we use it anyway, the time it takes to close a deal. So from the deal being created to the deal being closed is its most basic form. What's the difference in time from one to the other? But you can also get deeper. How long does a deal spend in each stage? How long do we spend talking to people on the deal? That sort of thing. So I think this is a very useful sales metric to work on. The reason it's difficult to show is just because it requires live good data, and we can't show any of our existing stuff. So you have a play, try and build this one yourself based on what we talk about. But tough. I don't have an example. Sorry, but the main things with sales velocity. Calculated fields, super useful. Calculated fields will allow you to find a time between, or to save a time between property based on 2 other dates. So you can say, take date A and date B and then new property C is the time between those two dates. So you can say from deal create to deal close is the most obvious one, but also from stage to stage is probably the other version of it, and that will give you an idea of the time. And then in HubSpot, if I go here to, I'll use create date as an example here for the date aspect. If we're going to say we want the create date and we want the count of deals as our measure. If I click on this x-axis option, we haven't really spoken about this yet, but I will flag a couple of things in here. One, frequency is going to default to monthly. Sometimes that's useful. I almost always want daily though. If I'm asking for a report, I almost always want it daily. So I'll change that to daily. And what that does is it's going to change this x-axis at the bottom here from month to date. I might just drop a filter in here first because otherwise it's going to really blow some minds. But let's just say is less than 30 days ago. And what that's going to do is mean that this is going to revert down to a single column, which is last month. Oh, actually, I should go. Let's call it 45 days just to give ourselves some breathing room. So it's going to condense it down to a singular. Now it's just going to be difficult. There may not be data in the last couple of days in this account, sorry. But that's not very useful. There you go. 90 days has given us 2 months, November and December. Not super useful. So I'm going to go back here to create date, monthly, change this to daily, and it's going to replace these month values with what specific days in those months that happen. So that's one useful thing. Not what I was intending to talk about, but a useful tool to know. Further down, things like sorting is where you can sort things out. What we wanted to talk about now was the date though, and what we can do with the date with regards to averaging. So I am going to make it the x-axis here. Let's bring that down to fields for now. And we'll put this in there. Now, you can see here that this aggregation is going to give me a distinct count. This can get a little bit like cerebral here, but functionally what it's trying to do right now is count how many dates there are, and it's telling me there are 3 dates. So it's counted the number of dates
1, 2,
as a distinct count, which is great, but it's not really the thing I was looking for. What I'm more interested in is the average date, or like maybe date is a poor average term, but let's say if it was our time-based report, what's the average amount of time? So what I can do here under aggregation is instead of having a count, go with the minimum date, the maximum date, or the median date. So it's going to give me some options to look at that data. If this was a count or an amount of money is another good way to use this tool. If I wanted to know what the average deal amount was, I would use this aggregation and change it from being a distinct count or like the value, which is what it would normally show me, to be the average, and then that will give me the average of all of the deals in the report. So using things like that to get deal velocity, what's the average amount of time it takes a deal to move through the pipeline? What's the average amount of time it takes a deal to move between stages? What's the average amount of time it takes a deal to close? All of these things are super, super useful to understanding how quickly is our sales team moving? Do they need more time? Are they closing things so quickly that they need more leads on their plate? Stuff like that. So like I said, sorry I couldn't show more, but deal velocity, sales velocity, there's lots of content out there. Jump in yourself and have a play with your own data. If you can, because that's where I think you'll be able to see it best. But functionally, how quickly are you closing deals? That's what it boils down to.
Awesome. And I most likely will be doing a HubSpot how-to on calculated properties soon. So stay tuned for that, and that will kind of take you through. We might use that as an example. I think that's a good one, how to actually use those. I do think they're for Pro and Enterprise again.
They are, you get them in Pro and Enterprise. You get some in Pro and lots in Enterprise.
There you go. Some and then lots. Awesome. Well, to finish us off, I kind of want to bring this all together and talk about dashboards. So dashboards in HubSpot, basically what we've been creating here are separate single reports. They all live in, if I just go back a little bit, they all live in basically a list of reports that you have created. Whereas the dashboards are really where you're going to start telling your story about your data when you need to present it to someone. So you can see here I'm in reporting. This is just a bunch of our reports that we've created today. But if I go into dashboards, this is where we can start to get a bit more creative and, like I said, tell a story. Now, before jumping into creating a dashboard, I would think about, once again, to use this, what story are you trying to tell? What are you trying to actually figure out? What insights are you trying to grab from the different reports you've made? Otherwise, it's just going to be a bunch of numbers on a screen and it's not going to mean anything. So definitely think about that before creating the dashboard. I will say as well, there's actually quite a few pretty good pre-made dashboards. I know we did talk about earlier, try jump in and, learn by doing, by creating your own reports. But I will say, if you're starting from scratch and you just need some quick sales numbers, the dashboards are pretty good. It also gives you a bit of inspiration on how you want to maybe add to it or, make it your own.
Yeah.
So for this example, I'm going to start with the sales rep dashboard because we are talking about sales, and I also wanted to introduce the filters on the dashboard itself as well. So if I go down, we've got the sales rep. It's going to ask you what reports you would like included. I'm just going to go all the way through.
It is worth noting, maybe while that loads up, there are limits on the numbers of reports on a dashboard.
Yes.
A dashboard at its core is just a collection of reports.
Yeah.
Once again, depends on your level of HubSpot, your level of Sales Hub, and if you have add-ons and stuff. But I think it tends to be about 20 to 30 reports per dashboard.
Yep.
And then a number of dashboards.
Yep, good point. So this one, it's already started pulling in some stuff. Once again, this is just a test account, so we don't have everything. But this is kind of what you're looking at when you're looking at a dashboard. We've got a bunch of squares around. And usually how I like to do it is, what do I want to read first? And then what do I want my point to be as I scroll down? But usually I'll put the most important ones at the top that I want to be checking all the time, less important ones down the bottom. The other thing that is pretty cool that you can do, I don't know how long they've had this. I don't know if I was just out for a while and then came back, but you can add images, you can add text, video. You can also add external content like things from Databox. I know we do that quite a bit as well. And if you're looking to rename, I'm pointing this out because I always forget where this lives. It's under actions and then dashboard details, and that's where you can rename the dashboard. Always forget that one.
I know I've had some clients put their logo on there if they share a dashboard externally, which is a little bit tricky. We'll maybe get to that later, but just putting a logo or putting some context on the board for the reports around it.
Absolutely, yeah, especially if you're sending it over to a manager or something, you might want to be like, this is the context, this is what it's telling you, have a look. Tell me later. In terms of how the dashboards work, they are quite interactive. So if you hover over things, it is going to tell you more information. And you can also click on most of the data and it will pop up with a little bit more information as well.
That's one thing I think that people maybe don't realize, don't know, is every report we've built so far today, every report on a dashboard can be clicked into for more context. If you want to see, if it's telling you have 15 people in this industry, in this state or whatever, you can click on it and see who those 15 people are, as well as curate some information. If you want to say, who are those 15 people and what are their phone numbers, you can have the report tell you that. So it's never just the graph. It's like the graph plus an Excel spreadsheet hidden behind the scenes.
Exactly.
Which you can then export out.
Yeah, which makes it so easy as well. You can also share up here. You can copy the URL or email it directly to someone. You can also add reports just by clicking here. From saved reports is the one we've just done, where we've saved them and they're sitting in the report library, versus creating a new report from scratch and just putting it straight onto the dashboard.
I'll note on that creating a report counts for bringing in a HubSpot report, like one of their reports. Technically, you're creating it, but it's their report. So if you're looking for that library, it's under create a report.
Last two things I just want to show you on dashboards when you're building it. Keep in mind that the filters are really great. You do need to be aware that it will do it per report. So if you think it's just going to filter everything, for example, if you use the create date for contacts, but you have company reports on there, it's not going to filter that down. You do need to use the correct filters per data source. So just keep that in mind when you're using it. The quick filters, so you can quickly filter out the date range, the owners, the teams, which could be really useful if you've got a report across multiple sales teams that are separated and you just want to quickly filter it down. Those can be super useful. So you can click on those, and basically what they'll do, if I add that, it's going to show up the top here. And now whenever I jump in, I can quickly change the date on it, which I think is super handy. You can also add your own quick filters as well. So if it's something more specific that you want to quickly filter each time you're in there, that's a good one as well. On the other hand, the dashboard filters are probably for anything that's a little bit more intense is the word I have in my head. Maybe there's multiple properties that you're trying to filter down into. And remember, when you're filtering, you're just bringing the data you already have and just slowly bring it down to a segment you want to see. So I often see people use this sometimes for if they've got if they're an enterprise business and they've got a bunch of data about the companies they've sold to, they'll just filter it down to one large enterprise company they've sold to so they can see data just for that company. Especially if they're high, business units, that's a great one as well. So just as an example, I'm just going to use owner, even though that was a quick one. Is any of me, Brie, for example. Now, if I applied that, it tells me it's only applied to 3 out of 6. So I know exactly, and it will tell you this, whether the dashboard filters have been applied or not. I think this is helpful so you can build just one sales rep report, and then if you're in a one-on-one, if you're a sales manager or something, you can just select the person and be like, all right, how you going? Like, let's have a look at this. So dashboards are really where you're going to be viewing and looking at everything, and the reports are where you're doing all the building and everything like that.
One thing I might add to that, something that I think trips up some people, and they do have a lot of notes, but you can gloss over them. Permissions can be a little bit weird with reports. So the last step of building any report is to give the permissions on who can view and edit it, which is good. It's like a security and making sure that no one's fiddling with data behind the scenes. So that's great. Report level permissions are overruled by the dashboard permissions. So if I make a report that only I can look at, but I put it on Brie's dashboard, Brie's permissions take over, and whatever her rules are for her dashboard are the new rules for my report.
Gotcha.
So keep that in mind if you're building a report that is, for whatever reason, something that you don't want other people in your portal to be able to access or edit. Be careful about what dashboards it goes on, because those will overrule it. So it's a little thing. HubSpot gives you a lot of warnings when something like that's going to come up, but something to be mindful of.
Awesome. Alrighty, well, thank you for joining us, everyone. If you have any questions, you can quickly drop them in the chat, but I would probably recommend emailing me once again at bg@neighborhood.co, that's mbh.co, before I forget. Thank you for joining me, Dom.
No worries.
Appreciate it. Lots of knowledge. So just a reminder as well for our March Hug that will be happening on March 28th, 2024, and we'll be talking about sales pipelines, how to set them up, how to optimize and make them even better, which basically goes hand in hand with reporting at the end of the day. It's basically taking those data insights, making your sales pipelines better as well. But that's everything for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us once again, and we'll see you next month for our next hug. See you later.